The smell of aged wood and dust fills the air. Jonah Miller spends his days shaping timber, letting his hands speak where words fail. At 42, he is a man defined by a long absence. A quiet endurance shapes his shoulders, built around providing a steady world. In the corner of the shop sits 9-year-old Ruby. She has learned the quiet rhythm of a house that holds a long silence. Jonah carefully sands down a rough edge. For 5 years, it has just been the two of them, a small, functioning operation. The morning routine shifts when an unfamiliar car stops on the gravel outside. The arrival is quiet, unannounced. Celeste steps into the dusty light. She carries the specific exhaustion of a mother managing everything alone, hidden beneath a carefully chosen coat. She clutches a phone tightly, her posture rigid. She is fighting a quiet battle over her children's future, searching for stability. Jonah looks up from his workbench. The contrast is sharp, sawdust and flannel meeting the tense elegance of a woman carrying too much weight. She asks for a carpenter to fix an old porch. Her voice is steady, but her eyes reveal the fatigue of countless sleepless nights. He simply nods. In his line of work, he fixes what is broken. He does not yet know how much needs fixing. The address leads to a sturdy, well-kept estate. It is comfortable and handsome, yet completely devoid of flashy extravagance. Celeste answers the door in faded denim. The polished armor from the workshop is replaced by pure, unfiltered exhaustion. Jonah sets to work on the porch framing. The rhythmic thud of his hammer becomes a new heartbeat for the quiet property. 6-year-old Gracie appears first. She is a whirlwind of questions, leaning over the railing to inspect every tool. 8-year-old Milo lingers in the shadow of the doorway. He is a serious, watchful boy, studying the stranger from a safe distance. Jonah does not push. He simply narrates his process out loud, offering Gracie a blunt tape measure to hold. From the kitchen window, Celeste watches. She is buried in paperwork, fighting a relentless battle to keep her family together. Slowly, Milo steps out onto the porch. He touches the sanded wood, perhaps remembering a father who once promised to teach him these things. Jonah recognizes the silent grief in the boy, and the bone-deep fatigue in the mother. It is a shared landscape of loss. As the sun sets, Jonah packs his truck. For the first time in years, the quiet house feels just a little less hollow. The porch repair spans 2 quiet weeks. In that time, an unplanned rhythm settles over the household. Gracie appoints herself the chief assistant. She hands over nails with profound seriousness, finding a steady anchor in the carpenter. Milo learns the names of the tools. He stands closer each day, filling the quiet space left by a long absence. Jonah does not try to replace what was lost. He simply sits beside their silent grief, offering the comfort of presence. Celeste observes this unspoken bond. Behind the glass of her office, the geometry of a desperate plan begins to take shape. On the final afternoon, the tools are packed away. The transaction is complete, the woodwork finished and fairly compensated. Jonah drives away, assuming he is leaving behind nothing but a repaired structure and a fleeting memory. 4 days later, a phone call shifts the trajectory of their lives. A simple request for coffee in a neutral space. Jonah sits across from Celeste. He is a man unaccustomed to such meetings, wearing a clean shirt and a misplaced sense of calm. Celeste does not offer small talk. She slides a document across the table, proposing a 90-day alliance on paper to secure her children's safety. Jonah stares at the dense legal text. For a brief moment, he assumes the proposal is a misplaced joke, laughing to break the heavy silence. But Celeste does not smile. She carefully outlines the threat. Her late husband's wealthy parents intend to claim the children, arguing a single mother cannot provide stability. She explains that a steady, present partner will completely dismantle their legal argument. She offers generous compensation for the disruption to his life. Jonah stops her. The mention of money feels wrong. His mind drifts to a serious boy sanding wood and a little girl holding a tape measure. He agrees to the 90 days, refusing the payment. Celeste searches his face, her lifelong suspicion momentarily shaken by a man who does not negotiate. Back at the workshop, the hardest conversation takes place. Jonah must explain a complicated adult truth to his 9-year-old daughter in a shape she can hold. He calls it a temporary alliance to protect a family. Ruby asks only one question, whether they must still treat them with kindness. The answer settles everything. 11 days later, they stand before a gray municipal building. It is a strange assembly, for confused children, 2 strangers, and a shared legal strategy. The ceremony is brisk and devoid of romance. Vows are exchanged like contractual terms, sealed with a formal handshake rather than a kiss. The ink dries. Jonah packs his modest belongings into the old truck, preparing to move his daughter into a house built on a foundation of secrets. Cheek xe tai dao lai tren loi di rai soi. Hai the gioi hon ton kok beat ne byuk phi zep gon dui kung mot mai na. Su sap zep bat dao voi en hung ran gioi ro rang. En hung kan fong riang beat, en hung lich trin duok tin ton kan then de tran su va cham kong kan thiet. Ho ko mot muc tu chung, the hien su on din tuet doi truok en hung nuoi ko guin quiet din tuong lai qua en hung dua tre. Thursday thatch dao tien ap den kai nuoi dan jia qua toa on zut hien kong bao truok, mang theo su quan sat sak ban lan lung. Jonah ko gang dong vi mot nuoi ban doi hon hao, en hung su kung nak qua on lai titsao su kien quang qua mot nuoi kong quen noi doi. En hung ka tra loi duok hok thuok long va siu chi thua tu nin qua on tau ra mot su im lang de gi ngo trong kan fong kok. Nan ra noi ko, Celeste kio on veo bong toi qua fong de du, nain hang yu ka on hei en gung vik ko gang dong kich. Ko noi catch duwei not de thuyet fuk nuoi kok rang ho la mot gia din, la hei siu hien dien trong kong john du nu catch on van luon lam. Jonah the long. On quay tro li bep, kong noi them loi now, loi bo du ne ra de sua mot cheek gi go by lung lei. Bon tre tu nin vei quan on, mang lai mot su map chan tuk ma kong mot kich ban now ko the tau ra duok. The court evaluator lowers her clipboard. In the messy, unscripted interaction on the kitchen floor, she witnesses a genuine connection that no legal strategy could possibly fabricate. She quietly signs off on her assessment. The cold suspicion is replaced by the undeniable evidence of a stable, supportive environment for the children. When the heavy front door finally clicks shut, the oppressive tension shatters. Celeste leans against the wooden frame, releasing a long, exhausted breath. From that afternoon forward, the carefully drawn boundaries begin to dissolve. The children do not recognize the contractual limits, they only see a full, lively household. 6-year-old Gracie quickly claims Jonah as her own. During dinner, she pulls her chair right next to his, completely ignoring the invisible lines drawn by the adults. 8-year-old Milo slowly drops his guard. He begins leaving his bedroom door open in the evenings, a quiet invitation from a boy who previously hid in shadows. 9-year-old Ruby thrives in the chaos. Once accustomed to the quiet of a grieving home, she now laughs loudly while building cushion forts with her new siblings. Jonah watches his daughter come alive again. Seeing her untethered joy, a deep fear begins to form in his chest about the fast-approaching expiration date of their alliance. Later that night, the house settles into a peaceful silence. Celeste stands in the dim glow of the kitchen counter, quietly preparing 2 cups of hot tea. She slides a warm mug across the marble island to Jonah. No lawyers drafted this interaction. 2 cautious adults are slowly realizing the performance has become their reality. The morning light brings a silent shift in the house. Celeste watches Jonah from the kitchen island, burdened by the weight of a hidden empire. He is a man who fixes what is broken, completely unaware that he is living with one of the wealthiest women in the state. She retreats to her home office, staring at financial documents that detail a massive corporate valuation. Her fortune has always been a fortress, a defensive wall built to keep out those who only sought her for her assets. But Jonah has slipped past the gates simply by not knowing they existed. His presence is entirely uncalculated. Outside, Jonah is teaching Milo how to measure a wooden frame.
Look, Milo.
The boy's serious face breaks into a rare, genuine smile. Celeste's heart aches with a terrifying realization. She is falling for a man who agreed to help a struggling mother, not a corporate heir. She attempts to re-establish a formal distance, retreating into the cold efficiency of her work. However, the house is too small for secrets when the children constantly bridge the gap. Gracie drags Jonah by the hand straight into Celeste's office, showing him a drawing and seamlessly pulling the two adults back together. Inside the dark office, Gracie proudly holds up a crayon drawing. It is a simple, colorful depiction of a family standing under one roof. Jonah takes the paper carefully. His rough, calloused hands frame the scribbles with complete, undivided respect. Celeste watches them from behind her massive mahogany desk. Her defensive corporate walls momentarily crumble against the sheer innocence of the scene. Glancing around, Jonah notices the imposing nature of the room. He assumes her demanding work is simply a heavy burden of management. He spots a misaligned hinge on one of the heavy oak bookshelves. Without asking, he approaches to inspect the uneven joint. His physical proximity to the desk sends a sharp spike of panic through Celeste. Thick financial ledgers lie open, exposing the reality of her wealth. She swiftly closes a leather-bound folder, her movements sharp and defensive, attempting to conceal the sheer scale of her hidden empire. Jonah pauses, misinterpreting her sudden tension as simple work-related stress. He gently suggests she step away from the desk for the evening. He leads Gracie back out into the brightly lit hallway, leaving behind a promise to fix the wooden shelf the next day. Left alone in the quiet office, Celeste rests her head in her hands. The invisible clock on their 90-day agreement ticks relentlessly forward. True to his word, Jonah returns to the imposing office the following morning, carrying a worn leather toolbox. Celeste sits rigidly behind her desk. The surface is completely clear of any documents that might betray her corporate reality. The quiet room fills with the sound of metal scraping against oak as Jonah carefully removes the damaged hinge. From her chair, Celeste observes the steady, unhurried rhythm of his work. It stands in stark contrast to the frantic pace of her world. Without turning around, Jonah remarks that working with wood is simple, because timber never hides its flaws.
Just take your time.
The innocent observation strikes a deep chord. Celeste recognizes that her entire current existence is built on concealed fractures. Pushed by a sudden wave of guilt, she stands up and steps away from the protective barrier of her heavy mahogany desk. She moves closer to the bookshelf, taking a deep breath as if preparing to dismantle the elaborate facade she has constructed. Before a single word can be spoken, a sharp ringtone shatters the quiet intimacy of the room. Celeste retreats into the shadows to answer the call from her legal advisors, letting the heavy curtain of secrecy fall back into place. Celeste ends the call in the deep shadows of the office. Her face is tight, burdened by new corporate anxieties she cannot share. She steps back into the warm light of the room, finding Jonah wiping down the newly fixed oak shelf with a cloth. Jonah packs his tools, immediately noticing the sudden coldness and rigid posture that has overtaken her. Assuming the call was a threat from her former in-laws regarding the children, he offers a steady, reassuring look. He promises her that he will stand firmly by her side during the upcoming legal assessment, ensuring their alliance holds strong. Celeste nods silently. Her heart is heavy with the bitter irony of his genuine support for her fabricated struggle. Later that afternoon, the atmosphere in the estate grows tense as the house prepares for another crucial visit from the authorities. The children, completely unaware of the looming pressure, happily set the dining table under Jonah's gentle, patient guidance. Celeste watches them from the hallway, realizing that her immense wealth cannot buy the natural harmony unfolding in her own dining room. The sharp, sudden ring of the doorbell echoes through the house, signaling the arrival of the next major test for their fragile arrangement. The heavy front door opens once more, admitting the court evaluator back into the elegant household. This visit is formal, designed to subject their domestic framework to intense, direct legal scrutiny. They gather around the long dinner table, the atmosphere thick with an uncomfortably heavy silence. The evaluator begins her questioning, probing into the difficult dynamics of co-parenting and child discipline. Celeste tenses, but Jonah answers without a moment of hesitation, drawing from his genuine years as a solo father. He speaks of patience and steady boundaries, his uncalculated honesty cutting straight through the official tension. The children sit quietly, their natural, unforced comfort with Jonah providing the ultimate, undeniable evidence. Watching him handle the strict interview, the evaluator's stern professional defense completely melts away. She makes her final notes, nodding with a rare expression of complete satisfaction before closing her folder. As the official leaves, a profound wave of relief washes over the dining room, securing the first major victory for their alliance. The morning after the successful evaluation, a profound lightness settles over the European estate. The heavy legal burden has finally lifted from their shoulders. With the immediate external threat neutralized, the carefully constructed boundaries between the two adults begin to fully collapse. Jonah spends his weekend finishing a custom wooden workbench in the garage. He works with a quiet, contented focus, truly feeling at home. 8-year-old Milo stands diligently by his side, handing him tools. The serious boy has found a steady anchor in the carpenter's patient presence. Inside the kitchen, Celeste watches them through the window. For the first time in years, she does not feel the need to wear her defensive corporate armor. However, the ticking clock of their 90-day agreement echoes loudly in her mind. The arrangement was never meant to be permanent. She steps into her dark office, unlocking the heavy bottom drawer of her mahogany desk where her financial ledgers remain hidden. She stares at the documents detailing her massive corporate wealth. The secret feels heavier now that genuine trust has blossomed in her household. She knows she must dismantle this final barrier. The longer the illusion lasts, the more devastating the inevitable collision with reality will be. Closing the drawer, she makes a silent resolution. She must reveal the full extent of her hidden empire before the 90 days expire. That evening, Celeste prepares for the hardest conversation of her life. She stands in the dim hallway, clutching the heavy leather folder against her chest. She finds Jonah in the living room, quietly reading a book beside a sleeping Gracie. The room is bathed in warm, peaceful lamplight. The serene domestic scene strikes her heart. It makes the impending truth feel even more destructive to the fragile peace they have built. She gently asks Jonah to join her in the office. Her voice trembles slightly, betraying the immense weight of the secret she carries. Jonah carefully places a woven blanket over the sleeping child and follows Celeste down the dark, quiet corridor without a word. Inside the office, Celeste does not hide behind her massive desk. She stands entirely vulnerable in the center of the dark room. Without speaking, she hands the leather-bound ledger to him. Jonah takes it, expecting to see legal documents regarding the children's future. He opens the folder. His eyes slowly scan the corporate titles, the endless zeros, and the massive valuation of the Harlow enterprise. The reality shifts instantly. The modest house, the vague job description, the generous compensation offer, all the disparate pieces suddenly fall into place. Jonah looks up from the pages. The warm connection in his eyes is entirely gone, replaced by the cold shock of a man realizing he has been tested. The heavy financial ledger sits closed on the dark mahogany desk between them. The silence in the office is dense, suffocating, and fragile. Celeste steps forward, attempting to explain her elaborate deception, but Jonah raises a calloused hand, quietly stopping her before she begins. He does not raise his voice. When he speaks, his words carry only the hollow, devastating weight of absolute disappointment. He understands the strategy now. The modest house and the vague job were careful filters, designed to test if he was just another opportunist. Looking her directly in the eyes, Jonah refuses to be a pawn in a corporate game. He firmly rejects any share of her hidden fortune. Celeste's defensive walls completely shatter. She realizes that the wealth meant to protect her has poisoned the only genuine connection she ever found. Jonah makes a quiet, unwavering promise. He will fulfill the remaining days of their arrangement solely to secure the children's stability. But the moment the legal ink dries and the court is satisfied, he will pack his tools and leave, taking absolutely nothing with him. Without waiting for a response, he turns his back. His heavy boots echo down the dark hallway, walking away from the empire. Celeste is left standing completely alone in the shadows of her massive office, surrounded by the devastating consequences of her own caution. The following morning arrives with a heavy chill. The physical structure of the house remains intact, but the emotional foundation has completely fractured. True to his word, Jonah maintains his routine. He prepares breakfast for the children, offering them the same steady, reliable warmth as before. Celeste watches from the kitchen doorway. She is entirely shut out, relegated back to the role of an observer in her own home. Their interactions strip down to bare necessity. They speak only to coordinate schedules and finalize the remaining legal paperwork for the impending court date. Seeking refuge, Jonah retreats to the garage. He pours his quiet, lingering frustration into the rough timber, sanding the wood until his hands ache. Desperate to bridge the massive divide, Celeste steps into the dusty workshop, attempting to offer a genuine, uncalculated apology. Jonah does not raise his voice. He politely, yet firmly, redirects the conversation back to the children's upcoming school schedule, building an impenetrable wall. Standing in the sawdust, Celeste finally understands the true cost of her defensive strategy. Her hidden wealth secured her safety but entirely bankrupted his respect. Inside the kitchen, a paper calendar hangs on the wall. The red circle marking the final custody hearing draws rapidly closer. Later that night, the two adults pass each other in the dark hallway. They move like complete strangers, bound together only by a rapidly expiring contract. The highly anticipated day of the final guardianship hearing arrives. A heavy gray sky hangs over the imposing stone architecture of the municipal courthouse. Inside the courtroom, Celeste and Jonah sit together at the defense table. Despite their private fracture, they project an unbreakable, unified front. Across the aisle sit her late husband's parents. They are wealthy, polished, and entirely confident that their financial superiority will guarantee their victory. Their legal team aggressively builds a case around isolation, painting Celeste as a solitary, overwhelmed widow incapable of providing a stable environment. But their entire argument shatters against the physical reality of Jonah. He sits firmly beside her, a steady, undeniable father figure. The judge carefully reviews the evaluator's final report. It details a warm, thriving household anchored by two dedicated, present adults. The polished certainty on the grandparents' faces begins to visibly crack. The solid foundation of their expensive legal strategy completely collapses. The gavel falls, dismissing the petition entirely. The legal threat is permanently neutralized, the children will remain safely under their mother's roof. Out in the echoing hallway, the wealthy grandmother intercepts Jonah. She looks at his worn suit, demanding to know what his payout is. Jonah looks back with steady calm. He simply states that a family is safe, and walks away, leaving her entirely unable to comprehend a man who cannot be bought. Back at the estate, Jonah begins packing his modest belongings. He is a man of his word, preparing to leave the moment his obligation is fulfilled. His worn canvas duffel bag sits on the luxurious bed. The stark contrast highlights a man who takes absolutely nothing from a world he does not belong to. He carries his bags down the grand staircase. Each heavy footstep echoes through the quiet house, signaling the end of their temporary domestic alliance. Inside her office, Celeste stares at the final court documents. The ultimate legal victory suddenly feels entirely hollow without his steady presence. She hears the familiar sound of his boots on the hardwood floor. The realization strikes her with overwhelming force: her protective walls have cost her everything. Abandoning her poised, corporate composure, she drops the documents on the desk and rushes toward the grand entryway, desperate to bridge the distance. Outside, the late afternoon sun casts long shadows. Jonah throws his bags into the back of his old pickup truck, preparing to drive away clean. The heavy wooden front door swings open violently. Celeste steps out onto the porch, her breath catching in the cool evening air. Hearing the sudden noise, Jonah stops at the driver's side door. He turns around, his expression guarded but willing to listen one last time. Celeste steps down onto the gravel driveway. Stripped of all her defensive armor and corporate titles, she stands completely vulnerable before the carpenter. Celeste stands on the gravel, completely stripped of her corporate armor, facing the carpenter she deceived.
I'm being honest.
Jonah stands by the open door of his truck, the engine quiet, waiting for her to speak. She admits that her hidden wealth was never a treasure, but a cage that kept her isolated from genuine connection.
Now I have to live with that.
She confesses that the modest house and the elaborate arrangement were built to find a man who could not be bought. Jonah listens intently. The setting sun casts long shadows, mirroring the heavy emotional weight between them. Celeste acknowledges that his attempt to leave empty-handed was the exact proof of honesty she had desperately sought. She begs him to stay, offering to completely wall off the fortune so it never touches the life they have built. Jonah looks toward the house, picturing his daughter and her children thriving together under one loud, chaotic roof. His fierce pride wrestles with the undeniable reality that the bond they formed was completely authentic. Slowly, he releases his grip on the truck door, choosing the complicated reality of their blended family over a clean escape. The morning sun reveals a house that feels fundamentally changed. The suffocating tension has been replaced by a quiet, cautious fragility. True to his word, Jonah maintains his routine. He prepares breakfast for the children, offering them the same steady, reliable warmth as before. Inside her office, Celeste begins the slow, deliberate work of dismantling her financial empire to meet his conditions. She contacts her attorneys, instructing them to permanently wall off her assets, ensuring they remain entirely separate from their life together. Each signature on the legal documents feels like a brick being removed from the fortress of isolation she spent years constructing. She watches from the doorway as Jonah helps Milo with a school project, a small smile finally touching his lips. She does not interrupt, she simply exists in the periphery, earning her place back in the home not as an owner, but as a partner. The process of rebuilding trust is slow, mirroring the patience Jonah practices in his carpentry. In the late afternoon, they share a brief moment in the kitchen, exchanging a look that carries no words but acknowledges the path ahead. The foundation is cracked, but for the first time, they are working together to fill the fractures with something far more permanent than a contract. The house breathes with a new, tentative rhythm. The sharp, suffocating edges of their conflict have dulled into a quiet, watchful peace. Jonah moves through the rooms with a newfound sense of permanence. He is no longer an outsider, but an essential anchor for the household. Celeste has abandoned her formal attire, choosing simple, comfortable clothing that reflects the vulnerability she now accepts. The children act as the architects of their reconciliation, demanding that both parents participate in their games and daily routines. During a sunny afternoon in the garden, Gracie insists that Jonah and Celeste sit together on the grass to watch them play. The forced proximity creates an opportunity for silence, where they can finally observe the life they are slowly rebuilding. Celeste watches Jonah's face, searching for the warmth she feared was lost forever. He remains guarded, but the ice has begun to thaw. She speaks quietly about her past, not as a corporate strategy, but as a person who was once deeply lost in her own fortress. Jonah listens without judgment, his gaze lingering on the children as he acknowledges that their future is now a shared endeavor. As the sun dips below the horizon, they remain in the garden, two cautious souls finding solid ground beneath a common sky. The dust of the long conflict slowly settles over the estate. The vast house now feels quieter, filled with a deliberate and intentional peace. Jonah and Celeste move through the common spaces. There is a new, lingering awareness of each other's presence, replacing the cold distance of their contract. In the evenings, they no longer retreat to separate rooms. They share the living room, reading in a comfortable, shared silence near the fireplace. Jonah finishes his garage work before dark. He chooses instead to sit beside Celeste on the back porch as the cool evening air settles in. Their conversations remain cautious but genuine. They focus on the children and the small, steady details of their newly intertwined daily lives. The heavy ice between them has completely melted. What remains in its wake is a delicate, slowly budding sense of true companionship. One evening, Celeste asks Jonah about his passion for woodworking. She genuinely seeks to understand the quiet man behind the calloused hands. He speaks with a warmth he has not shown in months. For the first time, she truly listens to the man instead of the hired carpenter. There are no grand gestures or sudden rushes of emotion. It is simply the slow, methodical act of learning who the other person is becoming. They sit peacefully beneath the stars. Two cautious individuals who survived their own separate storms are finally finding solid ground together. The 90th day arrives quietly. The calendar mark that once signaled an impending departure now simply marks the end of a legal formality. In her office, Celeste receives the final documents from her legal team. Her vast fortune is now entirely, legally separated from her household. She signs the final page with a steady hand. The heavy, gilded cage of her past is permanently dismantled, leaving her completely free. Out in the garage, Jonah completes his final project. It is not a temporary fix, but a massive, sturdy dining table designed for 5. He carries the heavy oak table into the dining room. It is a physical, undeniable declaration of his firm intention to stay. Celeste meets him in the center of the room, offering him the legal proof of her financial separation. She asks for nothing in return. Jonah gently pushes the papers aside without reading them. He states simply that contracts no longer have any place within their walls. The temporary alliance officially expires, replaced by a conscious, deliberate choice made by two adults who have finally found a safe harbor. The quiet moment is wonderfully interrupted by the chaotic arrival of the children, who immediately and loudly claim their seats at the new table. As they share their first meal around the sturdy oak, the house is loud, messy, and for the first time, perfectly whole. A year passes, and the estate transforms. The backyard, meticulously landscaped by Jonah's own hands, hosts a gathering born of pure choice, not necessity. Gracie marches down the grassy aisle as the flower girl, proudly announcing to anyone listening that her family is finally permanent. 9-year-old Milo stands as the best man. He holds the wedding rings with serious dedication, his watchful eyes now filled with trust. Ruby reads a letter she wrote herself. She speaks of a house that was once quiet as a held breath, now beautifully loud and alive. Jonah and Celeste exchange vows beneath the ancient oak trees. This time, there are no legal documents or ticking clocks, only genuine devotion. Celeste finally understands that her massive fortune was never a prize. It was a cage, and the only key was a man who walked away from it. Jonah returns to his workshop every morning. He chose the quiet honesty of his carpentry over the cold calculations of an empire. The two grief-stricken adults who once hid behind defensive armor have successfully fused two fractured worlds into one seamless whole. They stand together, watching their children play. They realize that the only true security in life is being loved without a single condition attached. The sun sets over the loud, joyful house. Sometimes, the most courageous thing a person can do is drop their defenses and simply stay.